Great. Thank you so much, Melanie, and hello, everyone. I've seen some of the sessions that you've been to, so I know you've had a great day, and I don't think we're going to disappoint today. So we're going to talk about the unexpected benefits of payroll to the cloud, and just to give you a little bit more about myself and Brian. So again, my name is Felicia Cheek. I'm a director of payroll strategy at Oracle. I've been with Oracle for about 2 years, and I've been working in the global payroll environment for many, many years. I've spent the last 14 years just focusing specifically on global payroll. So of course, the Global Payroll Association is near and dear to my heart. Brian, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, fine. Thanks, Felicia. I'm Brian Frost. I'm the University of Greenwich's Cloud Applications Manager at the moment, and I was the project manager for the university's move to the cloud back through 2019 and 2020. I've been in and around the payroll arena for, since 84, which is 37 years when I have to think about it, which is not good. Either directly working for payroll or in consultancies implementing payrolls for various customers. Okay, Felicia?
Great. So let's get started. And so let's talk a little bit about payroll in the cloud. And I wanted to start by saying I've been doing research and watching the movement of payroll organizations to the cloud for years. I remember when there was lots of skepticism and many thought that moving to the cloud was a good move for other parts of the organization, but maybe not quite for payroll. So let's fast forward to today. And I'm sitting here with Brian Frost from the University of Greenwich, who not only thought moving payroll to the cloud is a good idea, they moved to the cloud during a worldwide pandemic. So they are looking at, as we look at this, they are just like 74% of organizations you see who report in a 2020 payroll benchmarking survey by Deloitte that they were either in the cloud already, you can see 57%, or in the process of moving to the cloud. And so for me, having been studying this for a while, this is really, really exciting. Another 10% you'll see here of organizations say they plan to move to the cloud within the next 3 years. And only 16% say they have no plans to move to the cloud. So I certainly hope representatives from the 16% of organizations are listening to us today. And I actually, this survey was done in 2020, so probably based on a lot of 2019 data. And I think, having been through the pandemic, as we start to look around and, see what organizations are doing, I think these numbers are going to be more and more in the purple or the bigger color for organizations that are either in the cloud or moving to the cloud. So with that, let's start by talking about your payroll organization, Brian. Can you give us an overview of your organization? How many employees do you pay? How often do you pay? And how complex do you consider your payroll to be?
Well, the University of Greenwich has got a payroll of around 2,500 employees. Now, that's made up of staff, students, so casual workers that work in things like the bar and things like that, examiners that come in, and academics. So those four groups have their own unique requirements around them. We run 4 monthly payrolls, 1 mid-month because the casuals need their money, and the other 3 tend to be at the back end of the month. We've got a payroll team of 4 payroll administrators along with a payroll manager, and that covers off the staff for payroll.
Great. Sounds like a pretty decent sized organization for sure, with complexity as well, particularly as being an education institution. Do you agree with that?
Oh, definitely. Higher education in the UK has its own, I'll say, unique requirements. Now, every payroll department thinks it has unique requirements to deal with. But some of these, I think, have been around since the 1800s, not necessarily the 1900s and 2000s. So when we're dealing with legacy. Yeah, exactly. So a little history like that always adds a bit of fun to it. But with changing a system, it always allows you to streamline some of these things.
Absolutely. That leads us into our next question. And so tell us a bit about your move to the cloud. Was it smooth sailing, as they say, or was it a little bit bumpy? Let's talk a little bit about your risk management plan and your go live dates. Were there any changes? That kind of stuff.
So yes, was it smooth? When you throw in a pandemic in the middle of everything that you weren't planning for, if I'd gone to the CTO and said, right, I'm going to plan in my risk register a pandemic, we need X months worth of contingency, we need a load of kit, we need this, that, and the other, I'd just been laughed out of the building. So we were lucky enough, we started our project in July 2019. That was with an SI and using a rapid implementation methodology. So quick configuration, consolidation of items through to taking it into UAT, parallel run, and then live. We were taking forwards as a project, basic HR or core HR, payroll, expenses, time and labour or timesheet management, absence, and recruitment. So certain things had to shuffle around, but certain things were a minimum requirement to go live. So that's was our scope, and we were working quite happily along with that from July 19. Our actual go live dates were planned to be HR and Payroll for April 2020, so a 9-month implementation, and the others falling in just behind. As it turned out, we managed to get HR in for February 2020, and payroll went in May 2020, so 3 months behind that. To achieve that, we were streamlining items, we consolidated items, and we only took across what was necessary. So data migration, we took the minimum data set that we needed because we wanted to take it across into payroll. Payroll, we consolidated a number of pay elements to streamline the process. And as I say, the other items followed on. So up until March, we were working with a standard sort of project, office-based, shared space, face-to-face meetings, all of those things that you expected to do. And given that the university was very office-based as far as things were concerned, there was very little use of things like Zoom and Teams and Skype. Obviously, that was almost a change of culture to a number of people to have those conversations online, not wander up to people's desks, sit down, have a chat, etc. But we took it on. This was helped by one of our main objectives for the project, which was to remove paper. We had an old payroll system which was installed just after 2002, I think it was, and it had never really evolved. There was a lack of investment in the system. There was no self-service. After 16, 17 years, everything had turned into a paper workaround. So you had a system, you either had duplication in the configuration to get over items or a paper workaround. So we needed to remove some of that. So once we had decided on what we were doing, that almost put in the release plan of what items went there. Over time was very manual. It was bits of paper signed off by managers, sent to the payroll department. Expenses was manual, envelopes posted to accounts payable for them to make the payments. two items there were the big ticket items for us. If we got rid of the paper, we got rid of the manual processes. It streamlined all of the processes through to payroll. It also gave the users a better user experience. One of the items that came out of the staff survey back in 2018 was the users didn't like the experience of everything being manual. So this also helped with that. Now, take it. Sorry,
No.
Felicia?
No, go right ahead. Go right ahead. Didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's fine. This was facilitated by the move to the cloud as well, because, well, the move to the cloud and the remote working, because you weren't able to take those bits of paper while you were going. For the months of March, we had to have people travelling into the office outside of lockdown to get the bits of paper to bring them home again. By taking this live, it made it so much more easier.
That's great. Great. It sounds like it was a little smooth sailing, in addition to a few bumps. And I actually think a couple of things I just wanted to bring out, just based on the things that you said, is you guys went live during the pandemic. And if I got your dates right, HR went live a little bit ahead of schedule. So before the pandemic, and then payroll pushed out a month in May. Well, a couple of months, being that we kind of went home that one day in March, whenever it was, and didn't really go back to the office. So that's pretty good within itself. And then I hear a couple of other themes, which I think is really interesting, when I hear you say that the user experience was predominantly paper-based. So I've got some questions for you, a little bit more questions for you about that in a bit. But I think pretty good information on your move to the cloud. Was there anything else you wanted to add, or I've got a couple more questions for you?
On that particular side of it, probably not, but we then move into, if you like, the background task for that to facilitate it. As you know, one day we were in work in March, the following day it was everybody home to try and get working. Now, I did mention that the university was predominantly paper-based. It was paper-based and desktop-based as well. So PCs sitting on desks, connectivity only if you're in an office to get through the networks to the on-premise servers. We had to mobilise things like laptops, so portable equipment, laptops. We needed VPNs to get into our old on-premise servers. We had to do a few other bits and pieces from that side of it. People didn't necessarily have remote access, so they had to be shipped out with the equipment. And then obviously what doesn't help for a project is the fact that you were then working with people's domestic commitments as well. But as I say, we shifted things across. We moved a lot of the meetings to Teams and Zoom, so that we could keep in contact with people. We could keep the progress going, because we'd got to such a point where we were at parallel run stage before lockdown. We had completed our first parallel run, and we were just in March. We were going to do the second. So being so close to the finish line and letting a little thing like a pandemic get in the way would almost seem like failure to the team, because they put a lot of effort into getting that far. So hence, March's parallel runs were slightly delayed, and then just for belt and braces to be sure, we did a reverse parallel run in April to transition across.
And I think that's a good point when I hear you, when we talk about, your move to the cloud. We talk about the pandemic. So you're in the middle of this big product, and we haven't even talked about the fact that it's payroll and very sensitive and critical to the business. And you said the team had an attitude of being determined that they were going to move forward. That's, I think, is a great thing. And I think you started to answer, kind of read my mind on what adjustments did the payroll team make because of the pandemic. So it seems like you guys kind of sailed through that because of the commitment of the team and dedication of the team.
Next time you're in the UK, I'll get you to come into the office and tell the team that.
Of course, I'm painting it the best light. But the commitment to continue, I think, is very, very important and commendable.
Yeah, exactly. It could have been a lot worse. The team put the effort in to make sure that things happened. The reconciliations were done. There were some long hours. No getting away from that. Evenings and weekends to get there. But they were as much in favour of moving to the new system because it got rid of a number of the manual tasks that they were doing, so they could see the benefits of moving to the system. And not knowing how long the pandemic was going to last, because we started off thinking it was only going to be 3 to 4 weeks,
right,
then months and whatever else. It was almost a case of we had to bite the bullet and go with it.
Got it. That's great. Well, I like the agility of your payroll team. And, kind of speaking of that, one of the things that I do all the time when I'm talking to payroll organizations, I'm always very interested in where the payroll staff spend their time. So again, referring to the 2020 Deloitte payroll benchmarking study, most organizations indicate, 27% of them indicate that they spend the majority of their time running payroll. And the other thing that they spend lots of time on is the reviewing payroll. So you can see here the reconciliation, audit, and controls is 24%. I think this is interesting, and interestingly enough, the other large percent of time is spent on data entry, which becomes less of an issue with things like self-service, both for employees and for managers. Data entry is also followed by payroll inquiries. And I'm mentioning this because I wonder, would you say this is how your organization currently spends their time?
So on data entry,
well,
not
actually
as much
on all of it. Actually, just kind of looking at all of it, not to be precise, but pretty much, is this how payroll spending their time similar to this?
It's not far out. No, you're moving percentages here and there, but fundamentally that's right.
Right. And, and so if we just summarize this, the majority of the time is processing and reviewing payroll, answering employee inquiries, small a bit of time on process improvement. When we think about payroll, we think about the value proposition for the organization. Payroll has so much powerful data, the ability to be able to look at what you can do better, to do analytics and reporting so you can show or help the broader organization with decision support. Things inside about their labor is not really where you get to spend as much time. And we're seeing that consistently. But as we talk to customers in the cloud, we've consistently seen them see the focus in their areas continuously decrease over time. So the high focus, I should say, decrease and increase. The higher focus on, the transactional, the day-to-day, less time spent there, more time spent on the more process improvement, analytical, strategic type activities. And I think it's important, and hopefully this is something you will experience if you're not already starting to see the focus of payroll shift as a result of the benefits you've gained from moving payroll to the cloud. Let's talk more specifically about your organization, focusing on the benefits that you've gained. So with that, I wanted to ask the question, and this will be approximately, so give us your best guess. What percent of manual activities have been automated by moving payroll to the cloud?
Well, the two major activities were from both from an employee point of view, both relating to the removal of paper and the paper processes, are the claiming of expenses and of additional hours overtime. So expenses, that was all paper-based, photocopies, envelopes, and it wasn't unheard of to have expense claims lost. People would want to know why they haven't been paid, they'd vanish or whatever. Now, almost 99% of expense claims are online. We've delivered that through both the desktop, so mobile laptops and the likes, and with Oracle, you get a mobile app as well for expenses. So it means you can take photos of your expense of your receipts sitting on a train and submit them into the system while you're out and moving around. That's made it so much easier for not only staff but managers, because you can default cost codes and all the rest of it in there. It leaves virtually nothing apart from the press of the button for the photo and the submit. It leaves virtually nothing for the employee to do. Managers get approvals based on approval levels. So if it's the expense for a particular item is over a certain amount, or there's a permutation that's not allowed, then there'll be items sent out for approval, but other items go straight the way through. And what that's actually meant is that the time between claiming the expense and receiving the expense has been removed or reduced right the way down to almost less than a week for most claims. Then you've got things like overtime, because that used to come in dribs and drabs from various places. That's now centralised. It's there with the use of Oracle Time and Labour. That people put it in. There are rules around that, so the system knows, for example's sake, what particular day or what particular time is flat time, time and a half, time premium times, etc., which therefore takes away the checking time from the payroll team to make sure that A, the employee has claimed the right values, and B, that the manager has approved the right values. So those are the two main gains that we've got out of this. And what that has done is it's freed up a reasonable amount of time from the payroll team to actually get on with, shall we say, the value jobs as opposed to the data entry.
Yeah, and that's great. And that's exciting, because it's, you would prefer to shift the focus to those things that add value versus the things that are very routine and done over and over and over again. And I think I heard you say that you guys have reduced the amount of paper by 60%. That's pretty fantastic. Definitely, kind of changing and speeding up the way that you do things in the organization. So that's great. A couple of other questions for you. Can you describe how your payroll reconciliation and audit process has changed since you moved to the cloud? Tell us how you did it in the past, and then how you're doing it now. Sharing some of the major differences, and definitely letting us know, is it faster? And are your resources more confident in the quality of the data?
Yes, there's a number of items there that you bring up. Prior to moving to the cloud, and we were looking at manual spreadsheets, manual comparisons to compare items. The easy item for me to reference here is a variance report in payroll. What did someone earn last month against what did someone earn this month? Are there variances? Is the variance correct or not? The payroll team were effectively going down with their finger on each line of a spreadsheet, making sure that spreadsheet A last month was £2,000, spreadsheet B is £2,000, zero variance. With the system we've got now, we can compare this month to last month. As an example, single spreadsheet highlights the difference between the two sets of pays. We also know within that how much overtime has been paid out. How does that go against the file that came in? So things have been automated. It makes life so much easier to have that.
Yeah.
Plus, that is online. There used to be a number of reports that had to go wandering around the office to be physically signed by people. So the payment file needed to be physically signed to make sure that it could go off somewhere. Now that's all automated. Wet signatures have gone out the window. You attach the file to an email, the email comes back. It's speeded that process up as well. So again, it's about being able to do your job where you are as opposed to where you need to be to do the job. So working from home, this can be done without people having to travel, whereas before it was all part of the day-to-day activities that happened in the office.
That's great. That's great. So it sounds like you've been able to kind of reduce the time for your audit and reconciliation process. And would you say that your payroll staff and just, the university in general has more confidence in the quality of the data in coming out of payroll?
Oh, that's definitely on the basis that it's far easier to see the issues.
That's
the gaps,
great.
the issues are there. They're highlighted in front of you, as opposed to you having to try and find them. So yeah, the confidence is definitely there.
Yeah. I also wanted to add, I heard you say something that in the past you guys have had to go physically walk around the office to get signatures. And I will say I kind of smiled on that because back in the day we called that sneaker net. So one of the unexpected benefits I call out is getting rid of sneaker net, since everything is automated, and sneaker net's just, running around in your shoes to get things done.
That's a reasonable way of putting it.
Yeah. So next question, just thinking about self-service in particular, how has moving to the cloud impacted productivity and quality of payroll?
Well, as I mentioned on a couple of the questions, things like expenses and overtime have made it so much easier for employees to claim them, which in turn also goes through to productivity. Staff accepted self-service when it came in. Let's say there was no self-service prior to the system we've got, and therefore everything was manual. Employees knew what was coming. Part of the project was a comms exercise to keep them almost excited about getting a new system.
Yeah.
In actual fact, it's probably meeting their expectations as opposed to excitement, but we kept that going. We kept giving them newsletters. We kept engaging them on progress. We let them have a say to a degree. Obviously, that has to be tempered, but as to how things were going and how they saw things were happening. So they could feed into the process. There was valid comments came up, along with, as you would expect, some that were not quite so valid. So it was all parts of the university wanting to achieve the end result, whether it be the employee. It wasn't a case of the project and the payroll team doing it to everyone else. Everyone came along on the journey.
And I think it's an excellent point. And I remember you mentioned earlier a little bit about the experience, the employee experience. And so I'm assuming that self-service and just wanting to be able to automate things across the board added to the excitement and actually the push to go live during the pandemic. So thanks for sharing that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, and there was definitely a push from the employees as well, because when we slipped by a month on payroll, the biggest response was the fact that we hadn't gone live, as opposed to going live and there being issues. So that was helped, and that helped the team a lot. And we gave them things like the demonstration videos showing them what was coming. There's almost little teasers.
Oh, that's great. That's great way to keep everybody engaged, for sure. So I would want to ask you, or do want to ask you, can you take a little time to describe any changes in the type, the volume, or the process for payroll queries?
Yes. So with payroll queries, there are always going to be the standard day-to-day queries that you get. But those have been dropping off with the new system. When you think that a number of queries will be generated out of whether it be manual transposing of numbers, data entry issues, just purely the timeline of a bit of paper to arrive in the office against the payroll schedules. You're generating queries, and they're almost all those type of queries are negative because someone was expecting something and they didn't get it. Once we also automated a load of things, so as I mentioned, we streamlined the pay elements, etc., so that the queries, the calculations were correct, and not having to go through, understand the query, understand the position in which the employee was coming from, because it was the rules were there. They were very simple. They were straightforward. Cut down on a number of the queries. There were queries around access. What we've got now is a system that has got single sign-on, so it ties into the whole of the university. If you're in the university, on the university's networks, you've got access to your personal details, your bank details, your pay slips, everything else. Previously, we had issues with things like third-party payslip providers. They weren't tied into the into the single sign-on solution. They'd have a separate username, a separate password. Almost every month, it was estimated that we were losing 1 FTE a month just doing password resets on that system. So there are, having a single centralized automated system just helps in lots of different ways.
That's go right ahead. I'm sorry.
Sorry, no, you're fine.
Yeah, that's great, because this is obviously one of the areas that payroll spends a lot of time on, and so I really wanted to know what the impact would be there. So it's great to hear that. Great to hear that. So let's see. One other question that I have is, does your payroll team have resources that can configure and maintain the system, instead of things that, for things that in the past you had to use technical resources for? Does that question make sense? I didn't read it well.
It makes sense to me. I don't know about the other 79 people on the call, but well, I'm not going to take a show of hands on that one. So our previous system, support for payroll was not in-house. We had a third-party provider. As I mentioned, there was a lack of investment. The people with the knowledge had moved on, and they'd never been replaced by either training up the existing employees or bringing in skilled resources. Now we've got payroll supported in-house. We have an HRIS team that looks after HR and payroll. They support both the transactional processing as well as the configuration. We fall back on our systems integrator for the more complex items that were implemented as part of the process. But the idea is, over a period of time, we gradually remove that integrator from the process as their skills build up.
That's great. And I ask that question because we often hear that we alleviate some of the dependence on technical teams. So the need to have large technical teams when you move payroll to the cloud is not as relevant as an on-premise solution.
No, and especially if, which I was going to come on to a bit later, especially if you stick to or try and keep to what's referred to as a vanilla system. If you try and keep as simple and straightforward, using as much standard functionality as you can, then it's far easier to achieve. What's happened with systems over the years is people have customized them for every change. It's got to the point where they've extended the system to such a degree that what came out of the box 15 years ago is unrecognizable. So as it stands at the moment, we've got, apart from the calculations behind the system, we're using an almost out-of-the-box system for HR and for payroll. And then we've obviously for payroll, some of the pay elements have got individual calculations that we need to support.
Great. And that's a good point. I am almost sure that you're going to get some questions on vanilla as much as possible. But I do have one more question for you. What were some of the immediate benefits that you started to realize after going live with Cloud Payroll?
So if I focus on some of the expected benefits to start off with, we had this project was part of a digital strategy. The university had a digital strategy, a 10-year digital strategy, which was due to conclude in 2022, which took us, took us from a number of legacy systems that had gone out of support, the hardware had gone out of support, etc., to moving things on. As I say, getting rid of paper being one of the major items, streamlining things. So we got HR and payroll in as part of that. What that's now meant is we can now move a step onwards with ERP. So finance, procurement, accounts payable, accounts receivable, all into the same environment, and that's due to go live in 2022. Automation. One of the major benefits with self-service is the approvals. So the approvals go to the right people, they get approved at the right people, and where exceptions are, they get highlighted. Pay slips, as I just mentioned, were seamless, and having to manage employees, single sign-on in the organisation, was something that we've never had before. We removed the paper, and the reconciliations are obviously easier. So from that, along with the automations, are the primary benefits that we've got. So expenses, cost codes, etc. One of the unexpected benefits out of this, of working remotely, was all the training we delivered by Teams and Skype. So we're able to record it. This gave the payroll team an additional level of confidence, because not only do they sit through a training class, look at perfect scenarios, get delivered what the trainer wanted to deliver, they had that recorded to go back, be able to review again, apply that to a real life scenario, and that helped build the confidence for all the team. Again, mentioning the cloud, because what we're doing this in the cloud, we only need a browser. We don't need VPNs anymore. We don't have those obstacles of not being able to get things through. So that has also cleared things up. It's made it very simple for anyone and everyone to do what they need to do, whether that be the CTO, the HRD, or a normal staff member.
A normal staff member. I like that. Well, this is great. And we always like to talk about, it's just great information. And we like to talk about payroll in the cloud. And personally, I think it's great that we're all talking about the cloud, because when we first started talking about it some years ago, payroll just wasn't as confident, and it just didn't seem as promising for payroll. So to hear stories like this, it's just great. Thanks for sharing all of these great nuggets about your move to Oracle Cloud Payroll. We've discussed benefits throughout this discussion. I want to leave you with a few unexpected benefits of moving payroll to the cloud. And I also, in doing that, I also just want to know, Brian dropped a couple of unexpected benefits, like a reduction in overtime, more timely processes, and just a couple of, they're talking about the expense process. Now, these are some of the things, and we talked about, less paperwork, a real reduction in your carbon footprint. And this is not just for the University of Greenwich, but everybody, because you're automating a lot of those things that you're doing manual. And the other thing is, it's more than payroll. So a lot of times as we move payroll to the cloud, we think about the benefits to payroll, but there is a benefit, an increase in productivity across the entire hire to retire, hire to pay process. So keep that in mind as well. And the other thing, and this is really important, is the work-life balance for payroll resources. So I know payroll has changed lots and lots over the years, but think about the pandemic. Think about everybody working remote. Payroll is able to do that because now you have the ability to process payroll anywhere at any time. And that's really important. You can even be on the beach and process payroll. Pretty drastic, but it is possible. And that's what's important. And then easily.
You want to do that?
What'd you say?
Did you really want to do that?
And finally, one of the other things when we talk about benefits, really is the easily adapting new trends and practices. So the innovation of your payroll provider is something that is available to everyone. So looking at things like earned wage access, which I know, is driven country by country, but we're starting to see it more and more in the UK. We're seeing it a lot in the US and other countries. A lot of this technology is delivered with the cloud solutions, and you can have that just, really quick. That's just one example, but just being able to use the innovation and the technology, the new technology, the digital strategy of your payroll provider is a lot easier and cheaper than when you are looking at doing it internally and managing across your organization.